Hi learners, welcome to today's class. Today we are going to major on science. Remember, I'm teacher Benson Kabachia. You can watch me in my YouTube, digital teacher Benson Kabachia. I hope you are going to get knowledge on science from today. Welcome. Our topic today is about plants. When we talk about plants, plants are living things. So we are going to talk about reproduction in plants. Welcome. In our today's topic, we are going to major on the flowering plant. So we are going to talk about the flower as part of the reproduction in plants. So a flower is the reproductive area in plant. A flower is made up of many components, many parts. Unlike animals where you have different animals which are male and female, most plants, male and female parts are found in the same flower. So the diagram of a flower is well shown on your diagram. You can see it. And you're going to tackle one part to the other. We're going to start with what you call the male parts. The flower, as I earlier said, is made up of the female parts and the male parts. The male parts are two. One, we have the anthers, which produce pollen grains. Remember, pollen grains are the male sex cells in a plant. The anther is supported by the filament, which keeps it in position to facilitate pollination. So the main function of the filament is to support the anther. So these are the two male parts, the anthers, which you have said produce pollen grains, which are the male sex cells, the filament, which supports the anthers. The male parts are also called the stamen. Learners, on the other hand, we have the female parts. The female parts are four. We have one, the stigma. The stigma is always at the top. The work of the stigma is to receive pollen grain during pollination, whether it is cross-pollination or self-pollination. So the main function of the stigma is to receive pollen grain. The stigma is supported by the style, and when pollination occurs, the style develops to become the pollen tube. It carries the pollen grains which germinates at the stigma to the ovary for fertilization to take place. From the style, we have the ovary. The ovary, first of all, produces the ovules, which are the female sex cells in a plant. The ovary later develops to become the fruit, whereas the ovules develops to become the seeds. And the ovary develops to become the fruit after fertilization has taken place, when the pollen grains, which are the male sex cells that are produced in the anthers, fuse with the ovules, which are the female sex cells, which are produced by the ovary. After fertilization takes place, the ovary develops to become the fruit, the ovules develops to become the seeds. Learners, on the other side, we have what we call the petals. We have two types of flowers. We have the weed-pollinated flowers and the insect-pollinated flowers. In case a flower is a weed-pollinated, the petals are dull in color. In case the flower is insect-pollinated, the petals are brightly colored to attract the insects. So learners, petals, if they are dull, that is a weed-pollinated flower. If petals are brightly colored, it is a weed, it is an insect pollinated flowers. At the base of the flower, we have the sepals on both sides. The main function of the sepals is to protect the flower during the bud stage. When you talk about the bud stage, we are talking about the early stage of development. So the sepals protect the flower during the bud stage. Then you have the stalk, where the flower attaches to the stem. So on our female part, we have the stigma. We have said, one, it receives pollen grains during pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from the anthers to the stigma. Also, the pollen grains germinates in the stigma before it travels down through the style, which develops to become the pollen tube. On reaching the ovary, the pollen grains fuse or joins with the ovules, then fertilization takes place. The ovules develops to become the seeds. The ovary develops to become the fruit. Learners, for you to answer questions well, you must know the parts of a flower. You must know where the stigma is, the style, the ovary, and the ovules. Those are the female parts. You must know where the anthers are, the style, which are the male parts. You also need to know the petals and the sepals. So, learners, let us list down the functions of each part of the flower. We have said that the stigma receives pollen grains from the anthers during pollination. The style supports the stigma and also develops into a pollen tube. The anthers produces pollen grains, which are the male sex cells. Filament supports anthers. The ovary produces ovules, which are the female sex cells. Ovules develops into seeds, whereas ovary develops into a fruit. Petals attract insects if they are bright in color. Sepals protect the flower during the bud stage. Learners, with these notes, you'll be able to answer any question dealing with flower, which is the reproductive organ in a plant. We have said that the stigma receives pollen grains from the anther during pollination. The style supports the stigma and also develops into a pollen tube. The anther produces pollen grains, which are the male sex cells. The filaments supports anther. The ovary produces ovules, which are the female sex cells. The ovules develops into seeds, whereas ovaries develops into fruits. Petals attract insects if they are bright in color. The sepals protect the flower during the bud stage. Learners, make sure you are able to know all the parts of a flower as I have drawn on the diagram and their function. Learners, that marks the end of our lesson today. I hope it is a very interesting lesson that will help you to answer questions in your exam. Thank you very much. Remember to subscribe in my YouTube channel, Digital Teacher Benson Kabachia. Share, leave comment, and all will go well. Thank you very much.